Let me share something unusual about silence in today's digital world. We live in a place where almost everything is shared. Birthdays, coffee mugs, sunsets, tears, laughter, even pain dressed up with filters. Yet some people remain completely invisible. They scroll quietly, observe deeply, and rarely, if ever, post anything. You might know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And here's the question that often lingers in people's minds. Why? Why would anyone choose to remain unseen when the world seems to be shouting for attention nonstop? It's easy to assume that people who don't post are shy or introverted, but that's only part of the story. Beneath the surface, there's an entire psychology at work, one that speaks volumes about human nature, self-perception, and a quiet rebellion against a culture obsessed with visibility. For some, silence is not emptiness, it's control. It's the ability to decide what the world will never see, because whether we admit it or not, social media has quietly changed how we define ourselves. It praises display, it rewards noise. And yet, those who stay in the shadows often see things most clearly. They watch without interrupting. They think before responding. They analyze before judging. Psychologists have found something fascinating. People who don't post often score higher on traits like self-discipline, reflection, and emotional independence. They are less swayed by comparison and outside validation. In other words, they aren't trying to prove themselves. They are trying to understand themselves. And in a world drowning in performances, that is rare. Because let's be honest, most of what we post isn't just sharing, it's crafting identity. It's an unconscious audition for belonging. Every caption, every photo, every post says, "This is who I am. Do you approve?" But when you stop posting, something changes. You detach your worth from digital applause. You stop thinking in captions. You start living moments for yourself, not for a lens. And that's the hidden psychology behind many who don't post. They want authenticity in a space that feels staged. They don't hate social media. They just can't find themselves in it anymore. It's not about rejecting technology or being antisocial. It's about refusing to compress life into highlights. When you've seen how easily perception can be manipulated, you begin valuing what can't be shared. Silence, depth, flaws, truth. For some, the choice to not post comes after emotional exhaustion. Maybe they once shared everything until it stopped feeling genuine. They realized that every beautiful post carried invisible pressure. They weren't living, they were performing. So they stepped back quietly. No announcement. Just a gradual disappearance from the feed. But here's what's often misunderstood. Not posting doesn't mean not feeling. It doesn't mean they don't care. Often it means they care too much about presence, meaning, and protecting what's sacred. There's a concept in psychology called psychological ownership. It's the feeling that something belongs deeply to you. Thoughts, memories, experiences. Posting them dilutes that ownership. The moment becomes public, exposed to judgment, misunderstanding, or ridicule. So those who don't post guard their ownership of life itself. They keep moments private, untouched, pure, and maybe that's not withdrawal or sadness. Maybe it's freedom. Think about it. When was the last time you did something meaningful without feeling the need to share it? When did you last laugh, cry, or achieve something without immediately thinking of posting it? That reflex isn't natural, it's trained. A decade of likes, shares, and dopamine loops taught us to equate validation with value. Stepping out of that system feels rebellious, but it's also healing. They begin rediscovering the joy of doing things for themselves, cooking without photographing it, traveling without tagging it, feeling without explaining it. In that space, something awakens, a kind of self-awareness that doesn't need an audience. But not everyone who doesn't post does so peacefully. Some are driven by fear of judgment, rejection, or misunderstanding. Social media amplifies a subtle anxiety psychologists call self-presentational pressure. Constant awareness of being watched can be exhausting. They worry that their words will be misread, misinterpreted, or ignored. So they retreat, not from connection, but from the cost of visibility. They want to be seen, but fully, not superficially. Ironically, some of the quietest people online have the loudest thoughts inside their heads. They aren't absent, they're overflowing. They choose stillness over spectacle. There's a deep philosophy in that silence. In a world constantly shouting, "Look at me," invisibility becomes self-definition. It's a way of saying, "I exist beyond what you perceive." They may scroll through others' lives, nod, smile, even ache, but rarely project. They understand something many don't. Not everything we experience is meant for others. Growth, grief, transformation, they often happen quietly, unseen, unposted. And when someone has lived through enough of these private shifts, they realize being unseen isn't insignificance. It's where identity is formed, not performed. Here's the paradox. Social media was built to connect us, yet it often leaves people lonelier. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and start cultivating real connections. You notice who checks on you without updates. You remember who cares without reminders. That kind of connection, unbroadcasted, unproven, feels heavier, warmer, and infinitely more real. Those who don't post live in that space. They build bonds that don't require evidence. They find comfort in unshared moments and let life unfold without turning it into content. It's also about identity security. Knowing who you are, even when no one's watching. Being comfortable in your own company means you don't need an audience to validate your worth. That's not pride, it's peace. And often, those who don't post have the richest stories. But they save them for when you sit across the table, not across a screen. Real connection for them isn't measured in likes or comments. It's in shared silence, in eyes meeting, in laughter that doesn't need witnesses. They carry worlds inside them, process deeply, observe constantly, and understand quietly. They don't need the world to celebrate their existence because they already do, in their own silent, profound way. They just need to live it. And maybe, just maybe, in a world that's always desperate to be noticed, their silence isn't a weakness. It's a mirror, a reminder that not everything valuable has to be shared. Sometimes, the most human thing you can do is keep something entirely for yourself. You know what's interesting? The longer someone stays away from social media, the more they start seeing the world differently. Colors seem brighter. Time feels slower. Conversations feel deeper. It's like stepping away from the constant noise makes life feel real again. Because when you stop performing, you begin experiencing. There's a quiet beauty in moving through life without needing approval or proof of every step. You're not worrying about angles or filters or captions. You're just present, fully alive, inside the moment instead of watching it from the outside. And that's something social media rarely allows us to do anymore. But the reason behind this goes deeper than mere preference or style. It's rooted in how our minds respond to validation. Every time we post online and get likes, comments, or hearts, our brain releases dopamine, the same chemical linked to reward and even addiction. Over time, we start craving that reaction. We begin thinking in terms of what's shareable rather than what's real. Now think of someone who resists that cycle, someone who intentionally chooses to disconnect from that dopamine loop. That's not disinterest. That's self-discipline. It requires awareness to resist something built to keep you hooked. People who don't post frequently have a strong inner sense of control, a psychological term meaning their happiness and worth come from inside, not from outside validation. They don't need the digital echo of "you're enough" to feel it. And here's something even more fascinating. Research shows that those who take extended breaks from posting or scrolling often experience a real improvement in emotional stability and satisfaction with life. When your sense of identity isn't constantly reflected back at you, it solidifies. It becomes authentic. You stop shaping life into a neat, digestible version. You start living it fully in all its messy, beautiful, unfiltered complexity. And maybe that's the ultimate act of rebellion, staying whole in a world that prizes fragments. But silence online doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it hides exhaustion. For many, social media started as a place to connect, but ended up draining them. There's a subtle fatigue in watching everyone's highlight reels while trying to make sense of your own behind-the-scenes moments. You start comparing, even unintentionally. You question your worth, even when you know it's unnecessary. And eventually some people step away, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. They realize they don't owe the world a show. They don't owe anyone an explanation for their silence. They don't need to constantly prove they're happy to be accepted. That's one quiet truth of this generation. We've mixed up visibility with value. We assume that to matter, we must be seen. But real meaning doesn't need witnesses. The moments that shape you most often happen without anyone watching. No cameras, no captions, no audience, just you. And maybe that's the lesson those who don't post understand best. They know privacy isn't loneliness, it's intimacy with oneself. Because when you stop broadcasting every thought, you start listening to your own. You reconnect with parts of yourself that got lost in the noise. Your quiet dreams, your unspoken fears, your inner compass. That's something deeply spiritual today. It's not withdrawal, it's a homecoming. Of course, it's not always serene. There are moments of doubt, wondering if silence makes you invisible, if you're falling behind while everyone else is showcasing progress. But over time, you notice something remarkable. Your value doesn't vanish when no one is looking. It remains steady, like the quiet hum of a room after a storm. And maybe that's what true confidence is. Not loudly declaring yourself online, but calmly trusting yourself offline. People sometimes ask, if you didn't post it, did it even happen? The truth is, the experiences that shape us most rarely appear on social media. Your growth, heartbreaks, private victories, quiet acts of kindness, they live in memory, not media. And that is enough. When psychologists discuss authentic self-expression, they emphasize congruence, the alignment between your inner self and how you show up to the world. But in the age of filters, that alignment is constantly warped. We start living versions of ourselves created for approval. So when someone decides not to post, it might be their way of staying true, of preserving the fragile connection between who they are inside and how they exist outside. They don't need everyone to see their feelings to prove they're real. They don't need to photograph every sunset to remember how it felt. They live life fully and quietly. And here's the paradox. Those who live quietly often experience life more deeply. They aren't distracted by performing it. They notice details others miss, the way light moves across a wall, the pause before someone speaks, the faint sound of laughter in the distance. They are present, and presence is the rarest wealth in a world built on attention. Yet that presence often makes them misunderstood. People may call them detached, mysterious, or even cold. But if you look closely, their silence isn't emptiness. It's depth. It's the calm that comes from no longer needing to justify yourself to be understood. There's quiet confidence in not needing everyone to know you, only a few to truly see you. That's what people who don't post understand best. They know not every truth belongs to the crowd. Some parts of life deserve to remain untouched by algorithms or opinion. Once something is public, it's no longer yours alone. It belongs to judgment, interpretation, trends, and some moments are too sacred for that. So next time you notice someone who never shares online, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're just living. Maybe they've discovered peace in quiet corners not lit by the blue glow of a screen. Maybe they remember what many of us have forgotten, that being unseen doesn't mean being alone, being silent doesn't mean being empty, and the truest expression of self can sometimes be silence. In the end, we aren't meant to perform. We are meant to be human, and those who don't post remind us of that every quiet, unfiltered, beautifully invisible moment.